All right, everyone, welcome, welcome. I hope you're all having a great Thursday. I almost didn't remember what day it was for a moment. Let's see. Not quite sure what's going on with my video, but that's okay. So welcome to our workshop. This is our IBM Code Engine 101. Run your code containers and batch jobs. So if this is your first time, I'm excited to have you here. It's great to meet you. So feel free to share in the chat so we can all get better acquainted with each other. Your name and pronouns, your title and company or program that you're currently attending, where you're from or maybe where you're joining from during quarantine. Something you love, and then a quirk, something that's uniquely weird or different about you. So go ahead and add that to the chat. A few pieces of housekeeping before we get started. Yes, you do have access to the slides. If you scroll to the very top of the chat, I have all of the resource links listed there for you. So you will have access to all of the slides, covering everything that we go over today. This is the GitHub repository with sample applications. So if you're not sure where to get started with Code Engine, these are some great sample applications to get you started with. Yes, the event is being recorded, and you will be able to have access to the live stream at the same URL that you joined with today. So where we are all gathered now for this workshop, this live stream will convert into a recording at the end of the event, and you'll be able to watch the playback there. If you would like to follow along, you will need an IBM Cloud account. Again, this link is at the top of the chat as well. Also, if you click the Click to Check-in button, that button will also take you to the IBM Cloud login and registration page. Your IBM Cloud light tier account is completely free to use. You'll have access to over 40 of our services, as well as other offerings that we have available to you that also have free light tier offerings available. So you won't, it's not free for a certain amount of time, then you'll start getting charged. Your light tier account is always free and no charge to you. So let me go ahead and introduce myself. So my name is Jenna. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a cloud developer advocate at IBM. I'm from and also currently joining from Detroit, Michigan. I've been with IBM a few years. I joined in Austin, Texas, and have been quarantining in Michigan since COVID. My team's in New York, but they're kind of all over. We're all kind of all over the place now. So I'm becoming more of a nomad. Something I love are my dogs. I have Yorkies. They are normally pretty quiet and decide to be annoying at the worst times. So I think I'm getting better at having them locked up somewhere so you don't hear them screeching in the background. And a quirk. So something that's unique to me is I judge an entire restaurant's menu based on how much love and effort they put into their tuna salad sandwiches or their tuna melts. So if they're not willing to put the love into a tuna salad sandwiches, I question how much effort they're putting into the rest of their food. So that's a little bit about me. I would like to introduce you all to my partner for this workshop, Doug, and I'm going to let him introduce himself to you and tell you a little bit more about him.
All right, so I'm Doug Davis. I'm one of the technical offering managers for Code Engine. I will not say how many years I've been at IBM. It's been way too long. I will admit it's longer than Jenna. And I've been doing container stuff kind of basically since it started. I was actually the very first IBM employee to become a maintainer on the Docker project, for those of you who have been following the container stuff. So I'm an old timer with this container stuff, and that's about it.
Very cool. Thank you, Doug. So before we get started and dive in, again, you will need an IBM Cloud account to follow along with the workshop portion. And you can do that by clicking the box on the bottom of the screen, the little green button. But before we dive in, so for those of you that are new to cloud development or cloud native development, working with cloud technologies, or for those of you that are looking to expand your skills, I like to partner different e-learning resources and badges with each of my workshops. So I have a number of badges here that I highly recommend for all of you. I've worked through almost all of these. There's a few new ones that I'm gonna be working on pretty soon. But the first one is our IBM Cloud Essentials badge. Cool. So with the IBM Cloud Essentials badge, you'll be able to relate how IBM Cloud enables different services, so IaaS, PaaS, SaaS models, and different deployment, public, hybrid, and private models of cloud computing. So that's just a little bit, a very, very high-level summary of this specific badge. The next badge I definitely recommend is the Cloud Application Development badge. This is going to get a little more detailed with cloud application development, so expanding on cloud foundations, the core foundation of cloud technologies. This is going to get more into the application development on the cloud. The next badge I'd recommend is Applied Cloud Development. So this is going to allow you to get more hands-on with cloud native application development. This one's really great. You can build your first cloud native application. This is a new one that I hadn't seen before. This is one that I'm going to be starting soon. So this is the IBM Cloud Core badge. So this is, again, will help you understand the basics of cloud technology and become more familiar with the different cloud platforms and models, excuse me, including IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, public, private, and hybrid multi-clouds. So it's also going to get you familiar with essentials of cloud application like virtualization, VMs, containers, object storage, microservices, serverless, cloud native, and DevOps. So this is going to give you some hands-on experience with all of that, which is really cool. And then the last badge here that I recommend is our IBM Docker Essentials badge. So this is going to help you understand, like, what are Docker containers and what are their benefits. This is going to enable you to learn how to run containers from Docker Hub, create Docker containers, solve basic problems of orchestration, like reconciliation, scaling, high availability, service discovery. So it's also going to help teach you some best practices for using Docker files and how to use tools such as the IBM Cloud Kubernetes service. So to get started, we're going to kind of do an intro and more of a high-level overview of you know, how we're getting from containers and cloud and cloud native development and Knative and all of these pieces. How do they all fit together into what we're going to be looking at and getting hands-on with today, which is Code Engine. So the first thing we're going to just start with is what is a container? So a container is really just think of it as like a basic unit of software. It packages up all of your code and all of the dependencies for an application to allow it to run quickly and reliably from one computing environment to another. So containers are available on both Linux and Windows-based applications. And containerized software will always run the same regardless of the infrastructure, so regardless of where it's running. What's nice about containers is that they isolate the software from the environment, and that allows it to ensure that it's working the same across different infrastructure environments, despite differences, for instance, between development and staging. So this is kind of an image just to show you the difference. There's a lot of pieces here, but just to show, for instance, the difference between virtualization and containers and what containers actually look like. So we have our applications. We can have multiple applications running on the same supporting files and runtime, and they're all layered on top of the host operating system. So now that we are a little more familiar with what a container is, what is a container image? So a container image is an unchangeable static file that includes executable code so that it can run an isolated process on some sort of infrastructure. So for example, this is kind of what an image would look like within a container. So a container image is a lightweight, standalone, executable package of software, and it includes everything needed to run the application. So it's going to have the code, runtime, system tools, system libraries, and all of the settings. So container images become containers at runtime. And in the case of Docker containers, so if you're familiar with using Docker and running Docker containers, images become containers when they run on Dockers. But in this case, when they we'll show you images are going to become containers when they run on IBM Cloud's Code Engine. So if you're familiar with that, just to get you a little more warmed up to what we're going to be focusing on today. So another thing we're going to look at are container registries. So a container registry is a repository or collection of repositories, and it's going to be used to store container images. For instance, for Kubernetes, DevOps, any container-based application development. And this is kind of what that looks like here. So we have our container registry. So this is our IBM's container registry. This is what it looks like from a high level. So you can also access your images from your Docker registry as well. And so we're going to show you how to set up your container registry and show you how you are able to create a namespace. But more importantly, we're going to show you how to get hands-on with Code Engine. So this is kind of an extension to a place where you can store all of your container images. You can keep everything within your IBM Cloud account, your IBM Cloud console within our own internal container registry. So when working with container images, you're going to need somewhere to save and access them as they're created. So that's the point of, that's where the container registry comes in. It allows you to share them via processes of uploading or downloading. In addition to container images, registries also store application programming interface or API paths and access control parameters. So container registries are actually really powerful. So there are two types of container registries. We have public and private. Public registries are great for individual contributors or small teams that want to get up and running with their registry quickly. Private registries provide a way to incorporate security and privacy into enterprise container image storage. And that can be hosted remotely or on-prem. Private registries often come with more advanced security features and technical support. And a great example is Red Hat Cli, which I will show you an example of an image that's stored within the Red Hat Cli registry. So where does Knative fit into all of this? So what Knative does is it eliminates the need to provision and manage servers. So it lets developers focus on their code without having to worry about setting up all of the complex infrastructure. An added benefit is if the entire application components are incorporated from a third party through backend as a service rather than being written in-house. So native serverless environments let you deploy code to a Kubernetes platform, for instance, like Red Hat OpenShift. With Knative, you can create a service by packaging your code as a container image and handing it to the system. So your code only runs when it needs to. And with Knative starting and stopping these instances automatically, the resources aren't consumed unless your code needs to do something. So operation costs can be drastically reduced. And you can pay for cloud-based compute time only as it's needed instead of continuously running and managing your own servers all the time. So we have four different types of cloud deployment. We have infrastructure as a service, or IaaS. We have platform as a service. So an example of IaaS would be virtual machines. Platform as a service, for instance, like Cloud Foundry, containers as a service, Kubernetes, and serverless, which is also known as function as a service, which is what we're referring to when we're talking about Code Engine. So really the best way to think about the difference more high level, right? If you're really trying to decide very quickly and easily which of these 4 deployment models is going to work best for you, you really want to ask yourself, how much money do you have to spend? Working with a serverless function as a service model is really the most lightweight and least expensive way to go. So that's where we get to Code Engine. So IBM Cloud's Code Engine is fully managed serverless platform. It's going to run your containerized workloads, including web applications, microservices, event-driven functions like IBM Cloud Functions or batch jobs. Code Engine also builds container images for you from your source code. So that's something that you don't even need to do anymore. It's completely handled for you. Code Engine handles all of that for you. So just kind of an overview of what Code Engine can do for you. So Code Engine, as I mentioned, it's going to create container images from your source code automatically. It's going to store your source code in repositories. It's going to push images to registries. It's integrated into IBM Cloud and all of our IBM Cloud services and offerings. What's really nice is Code Engine handles all of your cluster provisioning, configuring, scaling, and managing servers. So for instance, auto-scaling workloads up and down or to 0 when no requests are active. So you don't have endless workloads running when they're not being accessed or calls aren't being made to them. And Code Engine is built on open source technologies like Kubernetes, Knative, Istio, and Tekton. So it's really keeping all of your applications and jobs really portable and flexible. So when we're talking about containers and container images and Knative, all of these are things that Code Engine is running on and built with. So it kind of gives you a better idea of what we're referring to when we're referring to Code Engine, and also how it's able to do all of these amazing things for you and allow you to really just focus on writing good code. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our dev environment. So if you haven't already, you will need an IBM Cloud account. Again, it's at the top of the chat as well as the bottom of your screen. And you are going to create an IBM Cloud free light tier account. Again, it's free to you. You won't get charged. It won't convert into, you start getting charges at a certain time. So this is what it's going to look like. This is where it's going to take you. If you already have an IBM Cloud account, feel free to log in now. And then the first thing we're going to do is go into the Code Engine console. So let me kind of show you. Okay. So when you log into your account, this is what you should see. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to do is, if you don't already, you're going to need to, if you go to the search bar right at the top, you can type in Code Engine.
Click on the catalog, then do the search. Otherwise, you're searching documentation and stuff, which isn't nearly as exciting. Not that there's anything against documentation, though, of course. It's just you're looking for the catalog. It's better to go straight to the catalog search bar.
Okay. So you're going to go to Code Engine, and this is going to take you into our Code Engine offering. It is in beta, so beta phase is ending March 30th. So if you want to take advantage of being able to use Code Engine free at no charge, it is, like I said, it is in beta till the end of the month. So at the end of the month, they will delete all of your projects automatically once it comes out of beta. I assume they'll start charging for projects, but it is free while it's in beta. So this is our Code Engine console. You can go and get started right away. Run a container image. Start with source code. Has some features here. You can access all of your projects here or create new projects. What I wanted to show you is the Code Engine CLI. So we're going to be working through this. I'm going to show you all how to do this. And it is all in the slides as well, but I wanted to show you where all of this lived before we get started here. So we're gonna get all this going. Okay. So let me move this so that it stops getting in the way. Okay, so one more thing we're going to do is, if we go to our catalog, we're also going to look up our container registry. So you'll be able to create a container registry as well. So what I'm going to do is get you all started with Code Engine here and getting your first project deployed. And I'm going to show you deployment 3 ways. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to install the IBM Cloud CLI. So if you go to the slides, I have the link there for Mac and Linux. So the first thing you're going to do is install the Cloud Developer Tools CLI. This is going to allow us to log in and access our IBM Cloud account. Okay. All right. And we can verify that the CLI is installed by running IBM Cloud Dev Help. So here's all of our app commands. Tells us what version we have. Okay. So the next thing we want to do is we want to log in to that IBM Cloud account that we just created via the command line. So the next thing we're going to do is run IBM Cloud login. Email in, password in. Just grab mine that is hidden behind a password, behind a password, and behind another password. Here we go. Okay. This will log you in fine because I have a different type of account. I need to log in a little different, but I wanted to show you how you could log into your account. Login. You have an API key. This is how you would be able to log in. Perfect. Now we're all on the same page. Okay, so this is what you should see. So the next thing we want to do is check out the available resource groups. So we have this message here, no resource group targeted. That's the command to target a resource group. So let me see what resource groups I have. You should all just have one. Your resource group should look like this default. So then I can run IBM Cloud Target -G default. Cool. So now I have indicated my resource group. So the next thing I'm going to do is install the container registry plugin. So if we want to be able to store and save, I already installed it. I'll just reinstall it. Create images and store them within our IBM Cloud Container Registry. Installing this plugin will allow you to do that. We can verify that it's installed by running IBM Cloud plugin show container registry. Cool. And this shows us a whole bunch of commands and a whole bunch of different stuff we can do. We can add a namespace to your account, assign a currently unassigned namespace to a resource group. We can display IBM Cloud Container Registry API endpoint, list type of security issues you want that you can exempt, so all kinds of stuff. So the next thing we want to do, now that we're set up with our IBM Cloud account, we made sure that we had the IBM Cloud Container Registry plugin installed. Let's make sure we have the IBM Cloud Code Engine plugin installed, which we looked at in the documentation in the IBM Cloud Console. So we're going to run this IBM Cloud plugin install Code Engine. I already have it installed, but why not? I'll just reinstall it. Cool. Again, I can verify that it's installed by running IBM Cloud plugin show code engine. Cool. And these are a list of commands with Code Engine. So we can manage Code Engine components, projects, applications, config maps. We can manage jobs and configure tasks. We can manage Git repository access secrets, image registry access secrets. So we can do all of this stuff in the command line. I personally really like working from the command line. I feel like I get lost in, you know, console UIs. So I really like having a clean terminal where I can just do everything from there and have a record of what I'm doing, what gave me an error, getting suggestions, what I need to do next. So now we can just test it. So if we run IBM Cloud CE help, CE is for Code Engine. There's a more extensive list. IBM Cloud CE command, here's commands. And the IBM Cloud Developer Tools CLI installs other plugins for you. So if you want to see a list of everything you have access to with your IBM Cloud Dev Tools installed and the plugins that we installed, you can view your list of plugins by running IBM Cloud Plugin List. As you can see here, you have Cloud Functions, WISC serverless functions, we have Cloud Object Storage, we have Code Engine, Container Registry, and we have Container Service, Kubernetes Service, and SDK. So these are all the plugins that we just installed. So the first thing we're going to do is, let me move to the top here and give us a little bit of room. And again, you can follow along in the slides as well. I have all of the commands and screenshots step by step. So if you get lost, you can just go back a slide. So the first thing we're going to do is create a project. So we're going to create a new Code Engine project. So I'm going to run IBM Cloud Cf project, create, name, and then I'm going to give it a project name. So I'm going to call it, let's just call it Code Engine project. Okay, waiting for that to finish. Let's give it a second. I think my computer is really working hard right now.
While we're waiting, just to let you guys know, the reason sometimes it takes a little bit of time is because it's actually setting up a whole bunch of things in the background for you automatically. So for example, when she deploys an application, you're going to get SSL certificates to protect the inbound traffic. And so it has to do things like set up the certificates and stuff like that and get a lot of stuff running. That's why sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get it going. So it's not just slow for the sake of being slow. It actually is doing work.
It's working hard.
It is, yeah. and it is in beta where this actually is one of the things that we're actually going to fix relatively soon. Different environments are a little bit faster than others.
Perfect. Okay, cool. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create an app from an image. So I'm actually going to use, there we go. So I'm going to run the command IBM Cloud CE application create -- name. I'm going to give it the name max object detector and -- image. This is where I'm going to specify the image location. So this particular image, as we talked about before, I think I'm getting lost in something. Oh. Okay, cool. So what I'm accessing here is a container image that is stored in the Red Hat Cli private registry for container images. So this image is an image for the max object detector from the Code 8 team. And I'll be able to show you what that looks like. Another thing that I'm doing here with this -- port 5000, so I need to, for this particular project, indicate which port I want this project running on. You don't necessarily need to do that, but for this particular image, I needed to specify a port because of it's not. Hold on, I need to go back to my. Here we go. So the port that this. Okay. So when you create a Code Engine application from an image, the port defaults to 8080 unless you specify. So again, all of the commands and everything are in the slides as well. So in order to indicate which port you would like the image to run on, you'll just add a -- port and indicate the port at the end. So that is why for this particular image, I'm changing the port to 5000 because the default port is 8080. So let me create this application. It's configuring, it's waiting for a revision to become ready. This is a pretty in-depth project. This image may be a little larger than some of the other simpler examples. But I thought it was a fun example to show. So I will show you guys what that looks like. So we'll wait for this to finish configuring. Okay, so now we're waiting for the load balancer to be ready. And once we create our app from our image, and again, we can use something like Cli, we can use Docker, we can use IBM's container registry. Cool. So now, as you can see here, we can check the application status. So let me run this. Take a look at that. Cool. So what we can see here is the max object detector is the name, has an ID, the project name that that we built it in. So we remember I created a Code Engine project and just called it Code Engine project. This is where I created this application from this image. So it's only 84 seconds years old. We have a creation date. We have a URL for the application. We have a console URL, which we can take a look at. We have the status summary, application deployed successfully. And then it references the image that we used to build this application. And then it gives us some information about resource allocation, how many CPUs, how much ephemeral storage and memory it's using, or that we've allocated, allocated for it, and then any revisions. We have some more here. So what I want to show you here is this gives us the link to the, so let me just go here. So I really like that the with the CLI, it gives you wherever you need to navigate to see, you know, all of the information that you need to see for your applications. You're not like clicking around looking for things. That's really nice. Okay, so here is our max object detector application. As you can see here, we don't have any revisions. We only have one revision. Our code is coming from our container image. We can also see the runtime here. So we can see the number of instances. We can indicate minimum, maximum number of instances. We can also define the amount of CPU and memory we want to use for each instance. We can limit the number of requests and timeout. So we can open the application in our URL. And I had an issue with this. But I wanted to show you, I just want to show you, for example, because I think this is really cool. The max object detector is actually really cool. So when you run the application, you can, and I added the repository and everything into the, sorry, brain fart, slide deck as well. So that if you want to, get your hands dirty deploying different options, you can play around with this project and run it locally, or do whatever you want to do and play around with the features of this. But what's really cool about this is, as you can see, we added an image of a person and a teddy bear sitting next to each other. And as you can see here, it used object detection to indicate their 98.7% probability that this is a person and 98.8% that this is a teddy bear. And you can upload any image you want. It's actually kind of fun to play around with. And then what's really cool too is that you can use your webcam. So it works live. So you can, use your webcam on your computer and in real time, it will give you probabilities. So it's 70%, 72% accurate that it's a pair of scissors, and 82% that it's a cell phone.
So Jenna, if you go back, I think you have to add index.html to the URL, then it'll work.
Where were you saying?
Go back to the web page where you try to hit the app.
Oops. Mm-hmm.
No.
Oh, this isn't it, sorry.
Yeah.
That's a different one. Open.
You click on the open URL page, right? Add index.html to the end of the URL. That's why. It's because the web app wasn't set up to handle a empty URL. So do /index.html.
/index.html.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So there we go. So yeah, we can use our webcam. Well, let's see if it'll work. Oh, okay. I haven't. Let's see if I'm a person or not. Looks like it's detecting. And then it's going to show us what labels it found. So if you see on the previous example, I had a person and a teddy bear. So we'll see how long this takes. So, and while we're waiting for that to finish doing its thing, I wanted to show you, let that go for a minute, Code Engine. Here we go. So I'm going to go back to our project here. So again, this is our project, and we can add, multiple applications. So right now we have one application, but we can add multiple applications. So this is what we have here. Oh, look, it's 84% positive that I am a person. So I will work on getting that probability higher in some sort of way so I can be more like a person. Okay, so I wanted to show you, you can also create an application. You can use different registries. So you can use Docker, you can use Cli, you can use IBM's container registry. You can also create an application from source code. So I'm just going to call this app thing. I'm just going to add this as an example just to show you. And then you can specify your build details. So you have a lot of different, so we have our source repository. We're indicating which branch we want to look at. It defaults to main branch. So maybe you have a deploy branch where your application is deployed. You can indicate that here. So you can have different options here. You have Dockerfile or Cloud Native Build Pack. You also have some output options. So I did not add a container registry reference here, but just wanted to show you, for instance. So here also, when you're creating your application, you can indicate those settings. So number of instances, how you want to allocate, what amount of CPU and memory you want to allocate for each instance. You can do all of that here, and add any environment variables that you may want to. Right here within the console, creating your app from source code. So the third way I would like to show you how to create a cloud native application and deploy with Code Engine is, we're going to do all this from the command line, is creating from one of our starter kits. So IBM Cloud has a ton of starter kits, and I really enjoy them. I think they're really fantastic, especially if you're into, you know, hackathons, or, you know, you want to learn how to do mobile development. You know, it's really nice to get started with a starter kit for your first application. And IBM Cloud starter kits are really fantastic because they allow you to deploy quickly and integrate all of our IBM Cloud services. Like, let's say you want to create a machine learning model and you want to deploy it to your application. It's really easy to do that. Or you want to add security to your application with, for instance, IBM Cloud's App ID, or you want to create a sandbox for an API you created for you and your team to be able to test your API calls and do some work there. You can do that with API Connect. So all of these things are already built so that they can be easily integrated in with the IBM Cloud starter kits. So the first thing we need to do is run Ibm Cloud Cf Install. So in order to access, our starter kits, we do need to have Cloud Foundry installed so that we can pull all of them. So the first thing we're going to do is install Cloud Foundry, our Cloud Foundry CLI. Perfect. The next thing we're going to do, so if you remember earlier, we set a target resource group, but we didn't set a Cloud Foundry API endpoint or target a Cloud Foundry organ space. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to run IBM Cloud target --cf. Perfect. So these pieces here that were empty before, now we have a Cloud Foundry API endpoint. We have an org and a space assigned. So now we can view those available starter kits. So if you run IBM Cloud dev create, retrieving available starter kits. Cool. So first, just to show you, we have Android and iOS mobile application starter kits. So for instance, let's say you want to build a Swift application. We have a ton. We have a ton of options. And let's say you want to build an enterprise-ready iOS application with a secure backend for push notifications, data storage, and authentication. When you, I'll just show you. So let's say I'm like, hey, I know what I'm doing. I'm a startup, and I want to create an enterprise-ready iOS app. Say iOS app. I'm not going to work through the whole thing, but just to show you, what it's going to tell us is like, oh, you want to create a secure iOS application. That's going to require the App ID service, so that IBM Cloud App ID security service that we offer. And what's cool is you can create it right here. Again, everything from the command line. You can also create everything from the Clouds Console, so it's really your preference. But what's cool is it will integrate everything into your application as it needs to be. So when your application is complete and you deploy it, it has all the pieces already there. You're not sitting and working on, installing dependencies and trying to work out bugs. All these things are done for you. So let me just cancel out of this. So for simplicity's sake, I'm going to show you how to create a simple application. So I'm going to just create a node application. So for instance, like with Python and Node, like you can incorporate all kinds of different machine learning services and instances into your application by selecting an option. And it's like really all you need at that point are just the API keys. You don't have to, and what's nice about using the IBM Cloud CLI is that you're already accessing your IBM Cloud account, so it will pull the API keys that it needs. So for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to create a Node Express application, Node Express app, CE for Code Engine. I have a bunch of resource groups. You should only have default. You want to select a service, so you can add services. I'll show you all the different services that are created. Watson Assistant, but we're not going to do that. So we're not adding any services. The next thing we're going to do is, so because we're deploying to Code Engine, I'm going to select for no DevOps, manual deployment. And then I'm just going to pick deploy to Cloud Foundry build packs. So let's just get our application created. And then I will show you how to deploy it. So this is a quick and easy way to get an application built. And again, it's already all set, ready to go. Cool. And we have it locally. So here's your application. So you have it locally, so you can work on it. Oops. Where'd my, too many screens. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to come back here. So within IBM Cloud, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my resource list. If you click this little hamburger menu here, I'm going to just type the name in because I have a whole bunch of other people's junk here. But if I look under apps, because I haven't deployed it, but I have created an IBM Cloud application. So I can click on my application. And it tells me like, hey, you need to deploy your app. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So also you can add services here again. So everything you can do from the command line, you can also do within the IBM Cloud Console. It's really just your personal preference. So here we have our deployment options. So we have IBM Kubernetes Service, we have Red Hat OpenShift, Cloud Foundry, and Code Engine. And again, serverless Knative deployment is really the fastest, cheapest, lightweight option. So what we're going to do is we're going to select Code Engine because this is what we want to deploy. It requires an API key, so you can just do that right here. No big deal. Just click a button and it's done. Next thing we want to do, so this is where we're going to choose our registry namespace. So remember when we took a look at that IBM Cloud Registry, and again, it shows in the slides creating an instance. I already have an instance, so it wasn't maybe the best image of, but in order to create a registry, again, I have the steps in the slides to do that. So if you see here, JWritten, so here's my registry that I already created. So I can just select that. This is my IBM Cloud Container Registry that I have. The next thing I'm going to do is indicate my resource group. Again, you should just have that default. And then project name. So I'm going to just call it Node Express App CE. So it's a Node Express application, and it's deployed with Code Engine. So configure DevOps toolchain. Again, I'll just click create. Not really a lot I need to do there. And then it's going to do all of the things. So I have oh, there we go. Okay, so we can take a look at the delivery pipelines here. Get it to load. Cool. So it's going to work through the build stage. Once it's past the build stage, it will work through the deploy stage. It will run a health check. And after that, it will be available for us. So I already did this. It's not 100% sure I'm a human. Okay, so this is an app I created earlier. So once it's done running through the build and deployment phase, you will see a success checkpoint here. If you don't see an update here, you can just refresh, and it will give you the source as well as the app URL. And so when you click on the app URL, this is actually the application that you created from the starter kit, and it is deployed to Code Engine. So Code Engine created the container image for us and deployed our application. And this is actually our live application. So this is it in all of its glory. So at this point, now I can just start focusing on building my application, changing the UI, adding, features to it, whatever type of application I'm building. And it's already deployed and it's already ready to go. Like, it's already good to go. Like, a lot of times we build applications and then we're trying to work out deployment, and we're getting stuck, and the build's not working, and all of these other issues. I've started working backwards, especially in hackathon projects, and just being like, let me make sure this thing is deployed and that it's running the way it's supposed to. And then all I need to do is really update the code. What do I want this application to look like? What do I want it to do? So it's actually really, really nice. So it looks like we did that, deployed up with Code Engine. We looked at all of that. Cool. So next thing I'm going to do here is, so what I've shown you is deploying an application to Code Engine 3 ways. We have deployed from an existing container registry image. I showed you one from Cli. You can use Docker. You can use IBM's container registry. I showed you how to deploy an application to Code Engine from source code. So your Git repository, maybe you're using your deploy branch, and that's where you're deploying. You have your deployment code for your application. That's the branch that is the main feature branch that you want you want to create an image to deploy. You can indicate that within the console. And then I also showed you how to make use of our IBM Cloud starter kits to create any application, really, web or mobile, integrate in different IBM Cloud services. Again, create that application and then deploy that with Code Engine, just with a few clicks from the IBM Cloud console. So I'm going to pass things over to Doug, and I'm going to let him talk to you a little bit about Code Engine, all of the amazing features that it has, all the things it can do for you, and give you a little bit more insight into into the service itself.
All right, cool, thank you. So I apologize for this chart being a bit of an eye chart, but it saves us the trouble of having to page through lots of different things, and this way your eyes can kind of wander ahead if you really want to. So as Jenna was basically saying, obviously Code Engine is a managed hosting platform on IBM Cloud where it's all focused on the developer and making their life as easy as possible, okay? So for example, a lot of people really like Kubernetes from a feature perspective, okay? But the problem is platforms like Kubernetes and Docker and other ones out there, while they're great if you understand what's going on, if you're a hardcore geek and stuff like that, but if all you want to do is deploy your application and you don't want to have to learn about all the things like pods, replica sets, deployments, all the stuff that Kubernetes makes you learn, Code Engine is for you, okay? Because all that stuff is still there. We just hide it from you, okay? So that's what the yellow box up top is talking about, right? It's like Kubernetes is just too complex, okay? Now, what Code Engine can actually host for you? And Jenna talked a lot about this, right? You can host your functions, your platform as a service applications, meaning your traditional 12-factor web apps. You can do straight containers, meaning if you have a container image, or you're going to bring us your source code, we'll build it for you. We also run batch jobs, and we didn't really touch much on that in the call here, but you can think of the difference here as batch jobs are really like any other container that you run in your system, but it doesn't take an HTTP request to come in to actually kick off the processing. Okay, a batch job is more like a standalone executable. You get it up and running, it does a job. When it's done, it goes away. Okay, that's why it's typically called a batch job or run to completion. Okay, so if you want to process a whole bunch of images or records in a database or something like that, and you want to do it on a periodic basis, batch jobs are typically the way to go. If you want to react to some sort of HTTP request, whether it's a REST call, whether it's a event type of thing, someone hitting your web page, whatever, if it boils down to an HTTP call, that's when you want to run it as an application inside of Code Engine. And those are basically the two sort of worlds that Code Engine supports. Now within those, you can basically do things like auto scaling. So if, for example, your web app starts getting bombarded with thousands of requests all at once, Code Engine will automatically scale up your application. As the workload or as the load of incoming requests dies back down, it will scale your application back down. And as Jenna showed you, you can control that scaling, right? You can have a scale all the way down to 0 if you have nothing coming in, or you can scale up as high as you want. Or if you're worried about, a very large bill or something like that, you can say, no, don't scale up maybe past 10 or something like that, 10 instances, that kind of stuff. So you have full control over the runtime aspect of your application, okay? And the point here is we're trying to expose all the underlying features of a platform like Kubernetes, but not force you to figure out how to make it happen, right? You tell us the runtime semantics you want, right? How do you want that scaling to behave? How much memory CPU do you want your application to have? How many requests per instance of your application can you handle at a time, right? Is your application single-threaded, or can it handle 200 requests at a time before we have to scale up? You just tell us how you want it to react, and we'll make it happen under the covers, okay? Obviously, everything's running in isolation, so you get security. We'll do application versioning for you. So if you roll out another version of your application, you'll have 0 downtime for your end users, right? We'll bring up the next revision, roll over your traffic over to the next revision, so you get that blue-green deployment type stuff that everybody's used to, automatically under the covers built in, okay? Now, Jenna showed you how to deploy from a container image. As she also mentioned, though, you can deploy from source code. Now, she showed you how to do it using the toolchain type stuff, and obviously that's great and wonderful, but if you want to stick within the Code Engine environment, you can actually point us to your GitHub repository or your Git repository automatically, or just point to it and we will build it automatically for you. So you don't have to go through the toolchain stuff if you don't want to. That type of build process is built into Code Engine automatically. Okay, so it's there out of the box. As I mentioned through the chat, we will integrate with IBM Cloud Services. So you tell us which service you want to connect up to. We'll inject the credentials as environment variables automatically into your running code, whether that's your batch code or your application. Okay, no magic, no complicated integrations for you. We'll do it all under the covers. Okay. No limits. And what we mean by this is a lot of times when you go to platforms like well, I won't mention names, just serverless type platforms in particular, or platform as a service platforms. A lot of times they have what we consider artificial limits, right? They'll say, oh, you can only have a certain amount of memory, or oh, your function can only run for X number of minutes kind of stuff. Well, we don't have those, okay? because this is built on Kubernetes where those limits really aren't there, we don't force you into a little box. You know, if you want to have your application running for a long period of time, go for it. If you want to have your batch job running for hours or days, as long as it doesn't die, we'll keep it up and running as long as you want, right? So no limits artificially imposed on you, okay? Event-driven type stuff. We have automatic integration into things like our cloud object storage, a cron type service, which we call ping, automatically there for you. You can leverage those automatically. Okay, we do support private and public registries, as Jenna was talking about, right? Where you store your container images. If they want them to be private or public, we do support those as well. Okay, so very, very feature rich, and you can kind of think of it as a merging of your platform as a service, containers as a service, functions as a service, serverless platforms, all roll into one, including Kubernetes, but with a simplified Kubernetes experience. And one of the things I like to tell people is our goal is for you to never know the Kubernetes under the covers. Okay, so it's great that Jenna showed you the technology that we're using, right? Knative, and she mentioned Kubernetes and all that stuff. But to be honest with you, if when you use Code Engine, you ever have to be exposed to the fact that Knative or Kubernetes is running under the covers, we have failed you. Okay, because our goal is to make it so that 90 to 95% of the use cases, you will never have to know it's there. Now, having said that, let me talk about that 5%. Okay, because one of the frustrating things you may experience with some of these platforms, again, I won't name names, is they do a wonderful job of simplifying the user experience, and that's great, but they also limit what you can do, right? So if that simplified user experience doesn't let you get to some advanced feature, you're kind of out of luck, right? Because they're forcing you into a particular box. Well, with Code Engine, we're not going to do that. We're going to say, look, if we did a bad job for some reason, and we hid some feature of Kubernetes that you really wanted to get to, that's okay. Go around us. We're not going to stop you. If you want to get access to the feature, if you want to deploy using your normal Kubernetes toolchain type stuff, right? You want to talk kube control, you want to use Helm to deploy stuff, we're not going to stop you. You can still talk Kubernetes, Knative directly if you really, really want to. It's just, let us know, because that means we're probably missing a feature from the Code Engine sort of user interface side of the house, and we'd like to fix that for you. Because as I said, our goal is to make it so you never have to go around us, but we're not going to stop you if you really, really want to. Okay, so that's why if someone really asks us to understand what the technology is under the covers so they can get to it if they really want to, yes, it's Kubernetes, it's Istio, it's Knative, but our ideal case is you never have to go there and never even need to know. And to some degree, we're hoping you never even know there are containers involved, right? We want you to go from source code to running application, source code to running batch job, and everything in between is hidden from you. That's our goal. And we're almost there, but it's not quite perfect yet, but we're getting really, really close. And that's why we'd love for you guys to play with this. It's in beta right now. We go GA at the end of the month when we actually will turn on billing, but it's free for right now. So go at it. You're not going to get charged. But please give us feedback. We'd love to hear your experience with it and get your feedback to make changes to make it better experience for you. Okay. I know I went kind of fast, but I know we're running a little low on time. So with that, I'll hang out, answer questions on the chat, but let me hand it back to Jenna.
Thank you so much, Doug.
Yep.
Let me just get the chat open here. So if you have any questions, let me just take a look at the chat to see. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to go ahead and post them in the chat. Or you can also select the Ask a Question feature. Let's see. Okay. Looks like we're doing pretty good in the chat so far. So while you're taking a second to think about any questions you might have to ask and throw them in the chat, first I would like to say congratulations to all of you for making it to the end of our workshop today. So you've learned a little bit about containers, you've learned a little bit about Knative, you've learned about container registries and how all of this is a part of what we took a look at today, IBM Cloud's Code Engine. We also went over all of the amazing things that you can do with Code Engine, all of the things that it can take care of for you so that you can just focus on what you really want to spend time focusing on, not dependencies, not integrations, but your actual code. And if you followed along, you've deployed your first application or 3 to Code Engine. So give yourselves a big pat on the back. If you would be so kind, let me add this to the chat for you. Forgot to copy this. If you would be so kind to take a minute to answer a very quick, I know everyone says their surveys are quick, but this is literally just 2 questions. It is a 2-question survey. I would also like to invite you to feel free to follow us on LinkedIn. Just get back to my view here. Here we go. Okay. I'm going to throw this in the chat. Again, just take a second to, it's 2 questions. What went well, what didn't go well, any suggestions? I always want to make sure that I continue to make these workshops and your experience with us better and improve upon it each time. But feel free to follow us on LinkedIn. You can also check out more of my technical content on my YouTube channel as well. I also have all of the resources at the end listed for you. So cloud certifications, all of the resources, again, they're at the beginning and the end, so you don't have to search around and try to find them. And feel free to follow us on social. So we have multiple meetup groups, depending on which geolocation and time zone you're in. With everything being virtual, you have the freedom to join any application or any workshop or, event at any time that works best for you. And feel free to follow us on Twitter. We also have a Twitch and a YouTube channel, our IBM developer channels as well. So I just want to say thank you all so much for coming. I hope you had a great time. I look forward to expanding on this in the future, showing you some more cool things, and integrating in more of our IBM Cloud Pak for Data services, Watson machine learning services, all the cool things. So make sure to follow us on Meetup and check for our next events coming up. So thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Doug, so much for all of your insight and all of your help today and giving us a wonderful introduction to Code Engine. And I will see you all next time. And any questions you may have, feel free to message us on LinkedIn with any questions or anything we can help you with. All right, see you all next time. Have a great one. Have a great rest of your week and an even better weekend.